Character, and I'd like to demonstrate some shades of gray journaling techniques in a Strathmore Bristol Smooth art journal. To do the shades of gray page, I'm going to be using some brush tip pens in the shades of gray, and you can find various different brands of pen, and they come, you can get just the varying degrees of gray colors to them, and it's a really great tool for being able to shade and do some interesting pages that are just involving the shades of gray. Really pretty pages. So I'm going to be using these pens. I have fat ones and I have thin ones. And the first thing that we're going to do is draw a simple design around the edge. And I like to do scroll shapes. They're just really a lot of fun to play with and very free form, and you can do whatever you want with them. And so I usually start out just by taking a graphite pencil and drawing the simple scroll shapes around the page, like that. And that's what we're going to follow the design with. So right off the bat, we're going to take the big fat lightest color, and I allow the brush pen to work with me, and by keeping it at the same angle you end up with thick and thin parts of the line. So that's what you're looking for. And as you progress on this page, you're going to determine your light source, and mine's going to be coming from the top right, and you're going to shade accordingly. So I'm going to take the second step, which is the second color of gray, and then I'm going to start adding shading where there would be shade. And you kind of use a painterly stroke with this. You're just going to, you can just pretty much paint with them just like you would with a brush. And you would continue going around until you get this done on the whole thing with the two colors. You're going to do the light color first and then the medium color. You can see you just round out the curves as you go along and use this second color of gray. It's kind of what I use to determine the actual thickness of the scroll shapes. And just kind of go along and add to it where you need to fill out the lines. Okay, and after you get that done, then the next step is to take the darker color, your darkest color, and you can use thick or thin pens with this. I vary it just depending on how fine of detail. And with the darkest color, you're going to hit just a few of the areas where the shading would be the absolute darkest. And on this one, I'm going right over, I'm not adding any more thickness at this point, I'm just going right over the areas that I've already done the light medium gray on. And just darken little bits of that up, kind of finishing this off. And you'll do that around the page, and you'll use less of this color than you did the other colors, and continue that around the page. After I get the scrolling done, then I like to add some other shapes in here. And so I just kind of, look around the page and decide where I want to add something. A lot of times I just add a simple shape. Like on here I added 3 spheres, and spheres are just very fun to shade with the pens, and so I like to add some of that. I like to add some straight lines as well with the curvy lines. So down at the bottom here I'm going to just add, and you can see I'm just sketching these out with the pencil just to kind of get an idea of where I want to place them. And then maybe some flower shapes. And so I would just fill in some of the areas and leave most of the middle area to do some actual writing and journaling on. And then these would be shaded in the same way that I did the scrolling. I would first color the whole shape with the light color, and then use the second color to add, a darker side, being mindful of the light source. And then the third color, just to darken that up like that. And I would go around and do all of the drawn elements in the same way. And then on the lines I used the medium color first, just to get a little bit different different tones of the colors going on. And so then I would just go through and shade just like we did before, using little brush stroke types of strokes here. Just kind of shade underneath the scrolling, shade the lines, and I shade one side, the darker side of the line, just with some sketchy strokes down, very fast. And then on the smaller elements, I'm using actually a smaller pen to get in there, and just shading them in the same way. And with this type of journaling, you could use any brush pens. You could, if you wanted to do a full-on color page, you would use, you know, regular pens, and you could kind of do the same thing. I like the tones that you can develop with using just the gray shades, but this is open for interpretation if you wanted to use color. So go around and I would do all the little flowers too, and any other, you know, design elements, and shade them the same way. Now I'm going to take just a fine-tipped black artist pen, and at this point I'm going to make sketchy lines around the design elements. And I do this around all of the design elements, the scrolls, anything on here. And like on the little flowers, I might do a little stippling, which is just making dots to shade. And I do that around the middle part of the flower to add a little interest. On things like the spheres, I love just the little sketchy lines, so I'm not precise about it. I do the lines, and then do a little cross-hatching for shading, extra shading. And cross-hatching is just making lines one way and crossing over them the other way, and it adds a design element. And then I also did some stippling around, it's called stippling or pointillism, around the outside of that to give another interesting design element to the page. So think of texture and design as well when you're doing this, because you have such a simple color palette. It's great to add different types of shading to it to give visual interest to your page and pack a punch. So then I would just go around and finish sketching around all of the design elements with a black fine tip pen. And when I start writing, when I think about what I want to write on my page, usually, you know, either it's a quote that I find somewhere or something else. But like right here on these balls, I decided that I wanted to add lettering to them. So I just drew the lettering in afterwards, and you can use a white paint pen to go right over the top and then make those pop out. So I'm just going to sketch them in with black pen, and then I'll go over them with the white. I'm going to use a ruler, and I like varying the height of the letters, and so so what I do is I just take a graphite pencil, and I like to make my letters fit with the scroll design. So I take my graphite pencil and I run it across, varying the height of my lines, or the spacing of my lines, thick and thin, and I just kind of go down the page and add my lines in. And then when I'm actually doing my writing, I make my words fit into those lines. And you can draw your writing on there first if you want to. If you're worried about how the spacing is going to be for your words, then you can use your graphite pencil and quickly go through and write your words right on the page, or you can just go right to it with a pen. And when I'm doing it, like up here, let's write happy, and see how my letters are just getting smaller. I stayed all capitals and then made it get smaller. And then I took a pen, one of the pens, and just went over the pencil, right over it. I like the pencil showing through a little bit because it just enhances that whole shades of gray. And then go through and shade. And you're just going to shade one side of the letter and underneath. So underneath and up. It's really, really, really easy. And once you get in the habit of shading one side, it just, as the page goes, it's really good exercise for shading, just doing pages like this anyway, but it goes pretty easy. So I would just go through and do that for all the lettering all the way down the page. As I'm writing my letters around, I love to find unique ways to use some of the words, and when I got down to the bottom where this was scrolling around, that was a perfect place to write picture, kind of at a curve. It makes that pop. So you have happy people, and then they see possibilities. You know, emphasize the words that are the most important and make the other words smaller in there, and it adds to the whole drama of the page. And now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to go over all the words with the pens, you know, with the lighter and the darker, shading them as I go along. Okay, and I talked about using a white paint pen. This is a poster paint pen. It doesn't have any of that yucky smell, which I really don't like. So I just would go in and add the white paint pen right over the top. Goes right over the other pen easily. And fill in those letters that you drew for the word art. And then I also like to add just a little white centers to the flowers to help those pop out. And so I would go do all of those. To make the letters on the word art stand out, I also am just taking a black pen and doing the same type of shading that I did to the other words, but darker. So you got the white contrasting with the black, and that will help that to pop right out like that. And now to help set everything into the page and give it a soft look, I'm going to take charcoal pencil and just lightly sketch around the shaded side of elements on the page, and then I take a blending stump and blend that out. And this just takes a few minutes to work your way around the page, and what a difference does it make. It really, really just gives a soft, smudgy look to the drawing on the page, and just helps incorporate the whole thing together. Gives it a nice soft look. So I would do that around all the drawn elements and all of the scrolls and different shaded elements of the page. And as you finish blending the shading in around the page, we're almost done. Now I'm going to take a white gel pen and add just a little bit of white highlights to certain areas of the page where things would pop out. And it doesn't take a lot of this, and I do it very quickly, but I'll add it to some of the lettering just where that white highlight would hit. Just go around the page. You can add it a little bit to your flowers if you want, a little bit on the little white centers. Just wherever you think white is going to hit. Maybe a little bit down here on your stripes. Little bit goes a long ways, and this is just another drawn element on the page. It's kind of sketchy looking. It really adds some interest. Down here for the little stripes, you could add some dots if you wanted to. Just take another pen and quickly go down and add some design to the stripes if you want to, or you can leave them plain. But this is kind of the doodling part of the whole process. And after you get your white highlights on there, you're pretty much done. Then you can just take an eraser and you would erase the pencil lines. They're gone. And there you go. And your page is finished. And you have a great looking shades of gray page. Very easy, fun to do.